All right, shalom, shalom. Let me check the feed real quick, make sure everything good to go. Okay, shalom, shalom, shalom. Hey, first and foremost, I want to give our glory, our honor, and our praise to our power, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, love, and salutation to the hopeful elect scattered around the four winds of the earth, pushing this word in our truth and our sincerity to the best of their ability. Shalom. All right, it's Brother Michael Ward from the Great Millstone, Columbus, Georgia Church, coming back through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemal Shai. Lord willing, I pray that this lesson be edifying and uplifting to you, sister believers, the men, women, and children of Yahweh Shemal Shai, believing on the true testimony of Yahweh Shemal Shai in the latter days. Shalom. And I want to get straight into it. As you can see, the title of this lesson, which I've been meditating upon this for about the last 2 days since I've been reading and First Maccabees, just taking my time going back and just reading the scriptures. And it was beautiful because I was able to see some examples, right? As the scriptures say, for whatsoever thing we're in the aforetime, we're for our learning, right? And I was able to see some examples in the scriptures on what happens when you don't follow counsel, right? When you don't take heed to the spirit, right? And these things are for our admonishment today, especially knowing the times that we're heading into a time like never before. And also when different decrees or, different advice and counsel that comes out from your head or from up top with the apostle and elders, when brothers are assisting you and correcting you, that you ought to take heed to it because it can be detrimental if you don't, right? And we all know about the disobedient prophet, right? If you haven't read that in the scriptures, go read that in Kings, right, about the disobedient prophet. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm gonna go straight into First Maccabees chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 55, right? Because during the time of the Maccabees, Judas Maccabees and his brethren, right, they was going about to rededicate the temple. That's why we get Hanukkah, the Feast of Dedications, right after Antiochus Epiphanes, right? The Greeks had profaned it and defiled it and desecrated it, right? When they was going about to war, to fight, to bring back justice and slay all the evil, wicked, ungodly Israelites that were selling out during that time and to avenge Israel. It was a particular man amongst the body that was with, Judas Maccabees and Jonathan, which I'm gonna get straight into it. And there was a righteous man, right? Men that was, you could say, on point at one period of time, but they did that one mistake of not taking heed, and we're gonna see what happened unto them, right? So this First Maccabees 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 55. It said, now what time as Judas and Jonathan were in the land of Gilead, and Simon, his brother, in Galilee before Ptolemy, right? Because they had split up two companies, for Judas and Jonathan to go fight in Gilead, right? Because the enemies was at that time was coming on all sides. If you read up in the chapter, it explained more to you, right? And Simon and his brother, Simon and his Jonathan and Judas Maccabee's brother, he took his company of soldiers and they went to fight in Galilee with Ptolemy, as it's saying, right? So Judas Maccabees had given instruction on these next individuals that I'm about to read about to stay at Jerusalem, if I'm not mistaken, right? To stay put, right? To guard where they was at, right? It says now, First Maccabees 5:55. Now, at what time as Judas and Jonathan were in the land of Galilee, and Simon his brother, and Gilead, and Simon his brother in Galilee before Ptolemy, Joseph the son of Zacharias and Azariah, captains of the Gershons, heard of the violent acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Wherefore they said, let us also get us a name and go fight against the heathen that are round about us, right? So they was given instructions in the previous chapter, which I'm gonna grab, right? So I'm gonna grab up, not previous chapter, up a little bit, right? They wanted to get themselves a name, and this is another thing too. Um, it's best to just stay in order and follow direction and do according to what the Lord got you set up to do. If you try to get yourself a name, right, whether it's you going into some topic that you know the Lord ain't give you the spirit to get to understand the breakdown, or you going about to, make these videos to make yourself look like you in this glorified state with spiritual power, or you outside, trying to preach and Walmart, whatever people like to do, going to different podcasts, whatever people like to do to get themselves a name that's outside of the regiment, which we have here at Great Millstone within various camps, right? It can be detrimental to you, right? Looking for that viral moment, trying to, beat somebody, right? So this is what, Joseph, the son of Zechariah, and Azariah, the captain of the Gershons, right? They tried to do. Said what? Before they said, let us also get us a name and go fight against the heathen that round about us. But they had got counsel on what to do. So we're going to go to the part of the counsel, right? So now I'm going to start at verse 9. It says, then the heathen that were at Gilead assembled themselves together against the Israelites that were in their quarter to destroy them. But they fled to the fortress of Delthama. It said it sent letters unto Judas and his brethren. It sent letters unto Judas and his brethren. The heathen that are around about us are assembled together against us to destroy us, and they are preparing to come and take the fortress whereunto we are fled. To Matthias, being captain of their host, come now therefore and deliver us from their hands. For many of us are slain. So the brethren that was in Gilead was sending letters unto Judas and Maccabees, like, hey man, y'all gotta help us come fight for us against these heathen, because they destroying us, right? And then they turn around and get another letter, right? They say, yeah, all of our brethren that are in the places of Toby are put to death. Their wives and their children also they have carried away captive, borne away their stuff, and have destroyed there about 1,000 men. While these letters were yet reading, behold, there came other messengers from Galilee with their clothes rent, who reported on this wise, and said, they are Ptolemy and Tyrus and Sidon, right? And all Galilee of the Gentiles are assembled together against us to come against us. So while they reading about how they getting attacked by Timothus, right, and Gilead, they getting a whole nother letter from their brethren over there in Galilee, how Ptolemy and Tyrus and Sidon and the Gentiles are coming against them to destroy them. They said, now when Judas and the people heard these words, they assembled. Listen to this now. This is what's very important, right? And these things too, counsel, right? Giving advice. The Spirit of the Lord be in the midst of counsel. When a brother tell you something through the Spirit, it's not that brother speaking, it's the Lord speaking, right? It says, now when Judas and the people heard these words, there assembled a great congregation together to consult what they should do for their brethren that were in trouble and assaulted of them. They said, Judas unto Simon his brother, choose thee out men and go and deliver thy brethren that are in Galilee. So Judas is giving instruction. He's the head man, right? It said, Judas said, he the head of the captain. He the captain of the host. Judas said unto Simon his brother, choose thee out men and go and deliver thy brethren that are in Galilee, and I and Jonathan my brother will go into the country of Gilead. So he left Joseph, the son of Zacharias, and Azariah, the captain of the people, with the remnant of the host and Judea to keep it, right? So he gave Joseph and Azariah to stay back with the remnant of the host in Galilee to keep Galilee, right? Not Galilee, right? Judea, Salakia, right? So he gave Joseph and Azariah and the rest of the people that were with them to go to stay in Judea, to keep Judea, right? Not to do anything else. And he gonna tell them specific instructions. He said, so it said, unto whom he gave commandments, saying, take ye the charge of this people, and see that ye See that ye make no war against the heathen until the time that we come again. So don't fight against nobody. You stay here, protect these people. You don't go war while we go about me and Jonathan, right? And Simon and my brother, his host, they go fight over there in Gilead, right? And me and Jonathan, we're gonna go to. Uh, I mean, me and Jonathan go to Gilead, and Simon go to Galilee, right? And his host. But you stay here, right? That's counsel. They came together and consulted on what to do, right? So jumping down to the point, because matter of fact, I'll read through it. I read through a little bit. It says so you can get the context of what happened. So it said now unto Simon was given 3,000 men to go into Galilee, and unto Judas 8,000 men for the country of Gilead. Then went Simon into Gilead, where he fought many battles with the heathen, so that the heathen was discomfited by him. And he pursued them unto the gate of Ptolemais, and there was slain of the heathen about 3,000 men whose spoils he took. And those that were in Galilee and Arbutus, and their wives and their children, and all that they had, took he away with him and brought them into Judea with great joy. Judas Maccabeus also, his brother Jonathan, went over Jordan and traveled 3 days' journey into the wilderness, where they met with the Nabathites, who came unto them in peaceable manner and told them everything that had happened to their brethren in the land of Gilead, and how that many of them were shut up in Bozrah and Bosor and Elma, Casper, Makid, Carnium, and all of these cities are strong and great, and that they were shut up in the rest of the cities of the country of Gilead, and that against tomorrow they had appointed to bring their host again the fortress, and to take them and to destroy them all in one day. Hereupon Judas and his host turned suddenly by the way of the wilderness to Bozrah, and where he had won the city, and slew all the men with the edge of the sword, and took all the spoils, and burnt the city with fire. From whence he removed by night, and went till he came into the fortress. And betimes in the morning they looked up, and behold, there was an innumerable people bearing ladders and over other engines of war to take the fortress, for they assaulted them. When Judas therefore saw that the battle was begun, that the cry of the city went up to heaven, and the trumpets and a great sound, he said unto his host, fight this day for your brethren. So he went forth behind them in 3 companies, who sounded their trumpets and cried with prayer. Right? It said, then the host of Timotheus knew that it was Judas Maccabees, fled from him, wherefore he had smote them with a great slaughter, so that they were killed of them that day about 8,000 men. So you got to think about all this report going about how Judas Maccabees and Jonathan, right, his host, and also with Simon and his host, how they're making a great slaughter, how they're winning these wars. By the whole time, these other mighty men, right, Joseph, the son of Zacharias, and Azariah, they was given direct instructions to stay in Judea, to guard Judea and the people, and not to fight against the heathen. But because they in their own heart, overzealous, they want to fight too, and get themselves a name. They end up making a foolish mistake by not taking heed unto counsel. Right. So I'm gonna go down to the point, because I don't want to, this to be too long-winded. Right. So I'm gonna go back to verse 55. Matter of fact, I started verse 53. It says, and Judas gathered together those that came behind and exhorted the people all the way through till they came into the land of Judea. It says, so they went up to Mount Zion with joy and gladness, where they offered burnt offerings, because no one of them was slain until they had returned into peace. So you got to think about that. Judas Maccabees and the brethren had made a great slaughter. They didn't nobody die. The Lord was with them. Right? It said, now what time as Judas and Jonathan were in the land of Gilead, and Simon his brother in Galilee before Ptolemy, Joseph the son of Zacharias and Azariah, captains of the Gershons, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Right? So now they hearing about it, probably getting jealous, wishing that they was out there, and said, wherefore they said, let us also get us a name. Right? We want to get a reputation of being warlike and valiant. Right? We want to have a great memory or reputation, legacy of doing these things too, instead of just following order. because it wasn't meant for them to go back there and do that. It said, and go fight against the heathen that are round about us, just being rebellious, right? Defying the orders that came out. It says, so when they had given charge unto the Gershon that was with them, they went into Jamnia. Then came Georges and his men out of the city to fight against them, right? So they thinking the Lord gonna be with them because they finna go get them a name and defend Israel when it wasn't no need to, because the war had already been won, right? And they had been given instructions. It says, and so it was that Joseph and Azariah were put to flight and pursued until the borders of Judea, and there were slain that day of people of Israel about 2,000 men. So because of their foolish actions, right, doing their own thing, right, leaning to their own understanding, they got their men killed. But Judas Maccabees and Jonathan and Simon, none of their men got killed, right? Because they went with the Spirit. These guys didn't go with the Spirit. So this is an example of what happened when you don't follow the Spirit, when you don't follow instructions, you don't take heed to counsel, right? You can get you and your men killed, right? You can put people's lives in danger. It said, thus was there a great overthrow among the children of Israel because what? They were not obedient unto Judas and his brethren, but thought to do some violent act, right? They thought, leaning unto their own understanding, doing their own thing, right? So these are things to watch out for, right? Because we're in a spiritual war now. We ain't in a carnal thing, right? But eventually things are going to get serious. You know, Esau coming down, having great rare, know they have but a short time, right? Where different things come out in the spirit, telling us what and what not to do. We ought to take heed to it, right? Because these things can be very detrimental. So I want to just grab some precepts on that, because these men thought themselves to be doing a good thing, but it wasn't. Right? Not taking heed to the Spirit. When Judas Maccabees and his brethren, they had a council, told these two individuals, Joseph and Azariah, to not go fight with the heathen, but to stay in Judea and guard Judea and wait until I come back. But because they want to get themselves a name, now they got put to death and their men got put to death. And these are things for us to really watch out for. This is why we go and read these scriptures, to learn what and what not to do, right? Because when things come out in the spirit, man, we're in the time now where if you don't take heed to the Spirit, the Lord going to start removing his spirit away from men, and the Lord going to start putting men to death as examples of what not to do. Never forget, the Lord always make examples. It's two types of examples. It's going to be examples on what not to do and an example on what to do. Right? We know the Lord is the power of duality, and we want to be following that example on what to do instead of following that example on what not to do. Right? Because these two men thought, look, let's read it again. It's First Maccabees 5, and I'm going to start at verse 6. It says, I'll read up again. Right? It says, Joseph, the son of Zacharias, and Azariah, captains of the Gershons, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done, right? Judas Maccabees, Jonathan and Simon, and the men that were with them, they heard about it. Man, I want to get a piece of, I want to get me a name too. But we just had a major council on that you two need to stay here and guard Judea. Stay with your men, y'all stay here. Right? We can't be stretched out thin everywhere. Now we're gonna leave the home base unprotected, especially when you think in the mind of war. You know, when you going about the war, we splitting up the companies. Somebody got to stay and protect the men, women, and children and the food. You see, everybody can't go out about, right? But because they didn't want to do their job, they want to take heed to the Spirit. They got themselves and their men destroyed, right? It says, Jonathan, the son of Zacharias, Azariah, captain of the Gershon, heard of the valiant acts and warlike deeds which they had done. Well, for they said, let us also get us a name. Why? Now you got you a name for being disobedient. Now we're reading about the disobedience of these two individuals and how they got their men killed. You see? That's why the scripture says, exalt not thyself lest thou fall. Right? It says, wherefore they said, let us also get us a name, go fight against the heathen that are round about us. So when they had given charge unto the Gershon that was with them, they went into Jamnias. Then came Georges and his men out of the city to fight against them. And so it was that Joseph and Azariah were put to flight because the Lord wasn't with them. They wouldn't follow the spirit. You can think you're doing something for a right cause, but it ain't of the spirit. The Lord ain't gonna be with you, man. Just doing the simple things of following instruction will keep you alive. You'll get delivered for being obedient. Because why? The Lord requires obedience rather than sacrifice. Guess what? It may not make sense to you why you got given a task. You better do it. Especially if it ain't nothing wicked. It'd be different, man, gave you a wicked task to do. Told you to do something wicked as hell. But when it's something spiritual, but it may not be what you want, that's a test. You see? Because we are being tested, especially now in these times that we're in. It says, so it was that Joseph and Azariah were put to flight and pursued unto the borders of Judea, and there were slain that day of the people of Israel about 2,000 men. Now, just before, if you read up, Judas and Jonathan and they men were nobody killed because the Lord with them, because they were doing what the Lord had set them up to do. Right? It says verse 54. So they went up to Mount Zion with joy and gladness, and where they offered burnt offerings, because not one of them was slain until they had returned in peace. And Judas Maccabees told these two individuals, man, don't go fight with the heathen until we come back. But guess what? They want to get them a name, huh? Okay, let's keep reading. It said, thus, verse 61, 1 Maccabees 5:61, thus was there a great overthrow amongst the children of Israel, because what? They were not obedient unto Judas and his brethren, but thought to do something. They weren't following the leadership. They weren't following the order, because Judas was the captain of the host. Jonathan, that's when you read about Mattathias, he was telling you, hey, if I'm not mistaken, if it was Simon or Jonathan that was supposed to be over counsel, right? Because up in this verse, right? It said in verse 16, now when Judas and the people heard these words, they assembled a great congregation together to consult on what they should do for their brethren that were in trouble, and assaulted of them. Then said Judas unto Simon his brother, choose thee out men and go and deliver thy brethren that are in Galilee, for I and Jonathan my brother will go into the country of Gilead. So he left Joseph the son of Zacharias and Azariah captain of the people with the remnant of the host in Judea to keep it, unto whom he gave commandment, saying, take ye the charge of this people, and see that ye make no war against the heathen until the time that we come again. But hey, that's what being hard head get you. That's why the scriptures say, for whatsoever thing we're in the foretime, we're in for our learning. Right? This Proverbs 20:18. It said, every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. Every purpose is established by what? Counsel. We can't look at counsel when we having conference calls or different thing that coming out just like, oh yeah, it's just a man talking. Okay.
Strong's H 6098. Eight.
Right? Ooh, counsel, advice. The Lord might be advising you through it, man, giving you some spiritual advice. I think that's why a lot of people get offended at, I ain't gonna even go there. I know what, I ain't gonna quit your spirit. That's why people get offended at Paul's writings, right? Because he was given in some of those things, he said, yeah, it ain't a commandment from the Lord, but guess what? It was spiritual advice from the Lord on how to conduct yourself in the faith. But some people, they so hard-headed, Jake think they know everything. They got it figured out, not knowing that the Lord is not dealing with you in that manner. That's why the Lord have people over you to advise you through the Spirit, because the Lord does all things. He's not the author of confusion, right? But of peace, right? And these scriptures are all about it. This is the basics of being the truth, taking heed to counsel, taking advice. And we got to counsel when men didn't do it, right? And they probably were warriors, probably been fucking people up. So they think, oh yeah, we finna go get us a stain too. We finna get us a name too, right? This Proverbs 11 and 14, where no counsel is, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. You can be kept safe, not only physically, but spiritually. That's the biggest thing. You want to be spiritually safe from judgment of the Yahweh Shema Shai. I know I do. I know I want to be safe in the spirit. Because when I'm safe in the spirit, I'm safe in the flesh. You see? That's what pride has to be checked. Ego. This ain't the time to be prideful. This ain't the time to put your ego in your fucking back. You better bury that shit. Because we come to a time where things are going to be moving in the spirit, and we're going to have to follow the spirit. Right? And Shalom, Yahabashim Shabbat, brother, hopefully, brother Hamayan, and may the Lord be with you in your house. Brother got Sirach 32 and 18. A man of counsel will be considerate. See? Consideration. Consideration is a big thing. That's something I live by. I always try to be considerate and mindful. Right? Especially when you're dealing with people, especially when you're over people. And even when you think about somebody that make a good supervisor, a manager, a person you like to work for, they're very considerate. They don't always make decisions that benefit them. They make decisions that benefit the team. But a strange and proud man is not daunted with fear, right? That's it. Hey, not fearing the Lord, not fearing that the Lord is the one speaking through that man. Even when he himself had done without counsel, don't think the Lord going to bring that judgment. Sirach 32 and 19, do nothing without advice, and when thou has once done, repent not, right? Ain't a reason for saying Salakia, because you thought it out, you meditated it, you went with your own heart. You see? And that's what we'll catch ourselves in positions that we can bring more hell upon ourselves with not taking heed to counsel. And not just bringing hell upon yourself, but the Lord, if it's something that really pisses him off, he can remove his spirit away from you. And that's a scary thing. It's Proverbs 12 and 15. It said, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. So you want to be wise, take heed to counsel. And watch how the Lord deal with you. Like how the Lord build you up, because really for you to take heed unto something or to listen to counsel, that means you got an obedient spirit. And we know the Lord love an obedient spirit. That's well pleasing unto him, a meek spirit, right? Because it takes to be humble to listen to people. Because that means that you know that you don't know everything. You ain't got it all figured out. But when you don't listen, if you're not a good listener, it's pride is somewhere in the mix, right? Oil and water just don't mix, right? This Proverbs 15:22, without counsel, purposes are disappointed. See, they ain't go with the counsel, so that purpose that they had made, right? Joseph and Azariah, it got disappointed. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established, right? And these things were written for whatsoever thing written aforetime, written for our learning, if I can, because matter of fact, I think it's in 3. Matter of fact, I think it's in 2. And let me grab that real quick, because Mattathias, when he was on his when he was instructing his sons, he was telling them who was going to be what. He gave them counsel. Matter of fact, it's right here. Yep. I started verse 49, first Maccabees 2 and 49. Now, when the time drew near that Mattathias, is the father of Judas Maccabees and his brethren should die, he said unto his son, now have pride and rebuke God the strength in the time of destruction, wrath, and indignation. Right? He said, now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law and give your lives for the covenant of your father. But I'm going to jump down to the point. Right? This is what he told them. Verse 64, wherefore ye, my sons, be valiant and sue yourselves men in behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain glory. And now behold, I know that your brother Simon, right, is a man of counsel. Give in to him always, he shall be a father unto you. Everybody, see, what people don't realize, man, and it's truth, everybody have a unique spirit that the Lord has given them for the betterment of the body, for the unity of the, so that we all can come in the unity of the faith. Everybody ain't a counselor, man. You got to know yourself. Everybody ain't good at giving advice. You might just be good at taking orders. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians, man. Right? You got to know what the Lord credits your spirit to be. Right? So Simon probably was the most level-headed, the most reasonable, the most patient, gentle, because that's all them things when you have to deal with. Hey, balanced, merciful, especially when you're dealing with giving counsel. You can't be quick-tempered and give counsel. You just to condemn somebody every time something don't feel right instead of being spiritual about everything. Right? But guess what? You might be a great warrior, though. Everybody got their own spirit, man. Right? And Mattathias being the father, he knew his sons, right? It said, as for Judas Maccabees, he have been mighty and strong even from his youth up. They know he was Judas Maccabee was with it. Even since he was young, since that boy came out of the womb, I've been seeing him since he's been cutting down trees. He killed tigers and bears. He been going with me on journeys. Since he was a youth, he was like that, right? Let him be your captain and fight the battles of the people. You see? So even them was given instructions and they followed it. And that's why the Lord was with them. So I just wanted to do this quick lesson. Lord willing, I pray that it will edify. So this just examples on what happens when you don't follow the counsel. When you don't take heed to the spirit, it can be detrimental not only to you, but the men around you. So I just want to give all glory, honor, and praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostle, is a great millstone who will teach well. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Kwame Yashala, Shalom.